There's a lot of complexity in project management and in quality management, and it's all a bit silly because you can take the most complicated management system in the world for designers and builders, and it comes down to four principles.
Episode 127.
This is The Business of Architecture.
Welcome back, Architect Nation. This is the show where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. If you believe that it's possible to make money and do good, then this is the show for you. If you aren't already on the Business of Architecture email list, make sure you claim your free account on businessofarchitecture.com by clicking the green Join Today button. I'm your host, Enoch Sears. Today's show is sponsored by BQE Software, the makers of ArchiOffice. ArchiOffice is the office and project management software built with the needs of architects in mind. And for a limited time, startup firms can get 2 free seats of ArchiOffice for a year. Go check it out at archioffice.com. Welcome back, Architect Nation. This is the second half of my interview with architect, author Brian Palmquist. He's also the Director of Quality at Ledcor, an international construction firm with 14 offices in North America. But before I jump into that, I wanted to let you know a little bit about the Business of Architecture Summit. We're quickly coming up upon that next month. You've heard me talking about it here on the podcast a little bit. I wanted to tell you I'm pretty excited. We have one of our speakers is Chad Ludeman. Now, Chad has a remarkable story to tell. You won't want to miss this. They have built a cutting-edge real estate development firm using only small local architecture firms in the worst economy in decades. So he's actually an architect, designer turned developer, real estate developer. They've been doing some very, very cool stuff with sustainable design, urban infill, and you're definitely going to want to hear his story as he talks about how they were able to build this cutting-edge real estate development firm in, frankly, one of the worst economies in decades. So to grab your tickets for the Business of Architecture Summit and have access to all the recordings for future dates, you can go to businessofarchitecture.com/summit. That's businessofarchitecture.com/summit. And with that, let's jump into our interview here with Brian Palmquist. He's going to talk a little bit more about the checklist, about quality control, tactics that he uses and that he's developed through his software program, which you can find at quality-works.net. So without further ado, here's my interview with architect Brian Palmquist. Brian, beyond having meetings and discussing and being on top of things like that, how should a firm set up a quality control process in their practice? Do you have any tips or pointers for doing that successfully?
Sure, you can use my software.
Well, let's talk about your software.
The book the book can be read completely independently of that. But I spent I had a web-based quality management and project management program, fully operational on the web 2 years before The Economist magazine announced that the web existed. So I've been doing this a long time, and there's a lot of history to that, but I don't need to go into that. What the book talks about is that there's a lot of complexity in project management and in quality management, and it's all a bit silly because you can take the most complicated management system in the world for designers and builders, and it comes down to four principles. Record the work, resolve the issues, review the results, and remember and learn to improve. Record, resolve, review, remember. If you have a system that does those four, you're 80% there already. If you don't, and it needs to be a system, because one of the things that happens to builders and designers both is that you get into the tussle, the fray of construction, and nothing is perfect. Things go wrong. And the client is watching all of this play out. And if either the designer or the builder fumbles the ball around issues, then that's what they remember. If every project has challenges and issues and deficiencies and nonconformances. And if it appears to the client that you have a systematic way of managing that, and there aren't millions of them, but but you are systematic in how you deal with that stuff, that's what they remember. And other than the very naive clients, commercial clients, sophisticated clients will come back to you because you got that and your esteemed competitors don't. So 4 principles. And the other thing is you only need what I call three tool sets to manage a project and manage quality. I attended a presentation of a construction management software piece a while back, very expensive, designed more for contractors and consultants. And they very proudly announced that their system had 96 modules. And I thought to myself, okay, that's about 90 more than I would ever want to deal with. So that complexity just drives you nuts. And you spend your whole life hopping around from A to B to X to 14.2 to whatever it is. So in my world, there are 3 components three tools to manage any project. And I've managed $2 billion projects with these 3 tools. And I've also managed much smaller projects. So the first tool is something that contractors know and architects see, but they don't often do. And that's what I call a work plan, or in my internet world, an iWork plan. And that's where you basically lay out all the steps from the beginning to the end in more or less workflow order, but it's not a schedule. A work plan says, here are the things we're going to do, and recognizing that increasingly we're not able to fully mentor people, here are the instructions on how to do each step. And if there are any forms or templates that are needed or checklists, here they are. So you can basically motor through this work plan from beginning to end and find all the pieces that you need and keep a diary as you're going of what's happening. You can capture the issues that are related and attach them to the right place. It sounds actually more complex than it is. So what I developed was an ability to, as an architect, I was lucky enough to find a software writer who I could get along with, and who we've had this deal for 10 years now, that I tell Mark how to design and build a building, and he puts it into code and makes sure that it is compliant with ISO 9001, which is the most probably strictest in international quality management system. And it's funny because I do something and he comes back and I say, no, Mark, too much jargon. What's a corrective action procedure? What you're trying to tell me is there's a deficiency and we got to fix it. Let's use real language that designers and builders can understand. So we've been having this tussle for 10 years, and the result of it is pretty straightforward stuff. The key thing about the work plan is that, and this is sort of mentioned in the book, I've identified 10 filters, or what I call the 10 C's, that can apply to every piece of every project that you will ever do. So let's say you're working on a project and you have and you've never done a job with the school district of Nashville, but you've done schools. So you have in your standard work plan a typical flow of what you do to design and build a school. And then you discover that Nashville has 4 different things that they want to do at different phases in the project. And they're all reasonable. They're just unique to the client. So you tag those Nashville school and you put them in your database. And the next time you do a school for Nashville, you tick the Nashville school tag. And in addition to all the other stuff, the pieces that pertain to that client populate your work plan. So if the person who's done all the other Nashville school work is on holiday, left the company, not available, and somebody more new is in there, you've got a better chance of getting it right. So the 10 C's, I should have written them down here, but I always forget to do that, are client, consultant, contractor, contract, community, calendar, cost, construction, climate, and complexity. And if I haven't got 10, hopefully no one was counting. I'm close to it. But if you tag your data that way, then what you're doing is as you work through projects is you're building not just a work plan or work plan library, you're building a practice. So when you come to think about succession planning, like one of the problems with our profession is that the expertise gets in the elevator and goes home. And one day the so-called expertise says to the younger folks, how'd you like to buy in? And the younger folks say, well, that's great. But what am I buying? Because they haven't got the content. And so what I tried to do was to create a place where you could capture that in a way that you can then say to your associates that you want to bring into the business or sell the business to, that's the content. I mean, there's always that personal thing, and that's important, obviously. But in terms of the guts of how a practice operates, if you capture that in a methodical way, that has value for your successors, in my opinion. So work plan, that's just one tool. Second tool are what I call actions. And actions are the transitory pieces of work and issues that arise during a job. So for me, a submittal is an action. A mock-up is an action. A field review is an action. A non-conformance is an action. A deficiency is an action. A change order is an action. All of these pieces. And the reason I say that is that I have one electronic template to do an action. And you pick a couple of different categories, and that determines what kind of an action it is. And you have different formats you can use to manage it. But so let's say the contractor sends me an email saying, I think we have a problem with this detail. I can't figure it out. And you look at it and say, well, I'm going to send you a site instruction. So you capture his note in the application. You send him an action called a site instruction. He then says, no, that's not a site instruction. That's extra money. And, we've all been through that tussle. So you, let's say you agree after some discussion. Sorry?
I said too many times.
Yeah. So you agree after that discussion that there is a change order. Now, the program that has 96 modules wants you to take that site instruction and set it aside and open up a new document called a contemplated change order. Well, I think that's dumb. In my world, you change the type of the document, you add a bit more data, and then the same piece becomes a new piece. And then maybe it becomes a change order, maybe it becomes a change directive. It's all captured. And one of the toughest things that we did, but we have done it successfully, is along the way, so you know how we all run an email. So if you're the designer and the builder, I send you that email about the site instruction. You send me something back. We have an email discussion, and then a site instruction comes out. We have an email discussion, and then a change order, all that kind of stuff. So what we've done is set our system up so that every one of those pieces is automatically captured by the originating piece. So I've had, when there have been big arguments, I've had strings of stuff like 25 pages long. But rather than having all these multiple Outlook emails that just get longer and longer and longer and people come and go, it's all automatically captured with the originating piece. And so somebody coming in halfway along can see more accurately what's happened. And when it's all done, you can get rid of all that email because it's all been automatically captured. It creates an automatic archive of everything. So that's kind of the action item. And the other thing is you can slice and dice them however you want. So on one of my projects, if the client says, I'm going to stop by in 15 minutes, I want to talk about the problem we're having on level 3. So I find the list of action items on level 3. At the same time, I say, okay, can I have a list, please, of all the open action items that have been assigned to the client, all the stuff that's in his court. So he comes along in 15 minutes. We have our discussion, and it can be all happening on the phone, too, because it's fairly quick, our discussion about that issue. And they say, well, while I got you here, Bob, how are we doing with this and this and this and this and this?